The best way of controlling somebody from the narcissist perspective is to be able to pull it off without the person knowing what they're doing. And what I mean by that is, no one can really force you to do anything, not even a narcissist or a toxic partner. Okay, well, maybe sometimes they can force you to do something here or there, but when you're twisting somebody's arm to do something they don't want, it's usually a matter of time before the whole dynamic just falls apart. So narcissists, when they want to control you, when they want to control people, they try to do it in a very subtle, clever way where you don't really realize what's happening. And they do that because, and they can only get away with that because they understand you quite well. Because if they're with you, that means that they would have done a lot of intelligence gathering on you, a lot of data mining to really understand what you're all about, what makes you tick, how you react to certain prompts, what worries you, what entices you, and they kind of get an overall understanding of all those things, and they use it to their advantage when they want you to behave in certain ways. So narcissists control you in very subtle, discreet, covert ways. And they like to do it in such a way where you can't really call them out on it, at least not most of the time. And even if you could, they like to be able to hide behind the veil of plausible deniability. There has to be an argument to say, no, that they were not actually controlling you. You're imagining it. And that has to be plausible. So one thing they do is when they engage with you, when they're talking to you about something, they they can make you very suggestible. They can they can kind of gear the conversation to a certain point. Like, oh, why don't you do this? I think you would enjoy this. You know, why don't you go buy some flowers for your mother's birthday? I think she'd enjoy it. I think you'd feel good about it. I'll even help you write the card. That's just an example. Let's say if she, for some reason, she wanted you to buy your mother a present, she would, the narcissist could come across in such a way as to make you very suggestible, make you think it's a good idea, that it's the right thing, even if you've never given your mother flowers before. Or they might want you to do a favor for them, and maybe the favor for them is actually you asking a third party for a favor. It's like, oh, can you ask such and such to lend us money? Maybe ask such and such to lend you $100. It's like, they're really nice. They know you're trustworthy. They know you'll pay them back, so they won't have an issue with it. They kind of put all this stuff in your mind where you believe, okay, actually, it's not such a bad idea for me to ask that person to lend me money. But maybe you never would have done that in your normal state. But with the narcissist putting a few things in your mind, all of a sudden it sounds very normal. Why not? There's nothing wrong with it, even though it's not really characteristic of you. A lot of time, narcissists would do things like that, like the flowers example to your mother, or the lending money to somebody, something that's just slightly outside your ordinary, right? Something you're not used, something that you wouldn't ordinarily do. And on the face of it, what they're asking you to do, or they're trying to, through suggestion, make you kind of volunteer to do, is it's not a big deal. Why not? But if you go through with that, the narcissist is actually practicing their ability to maneuver you into becoming controllable by them. They're testing how suggestible, how easily manipulatable you are. So narcissists would do a lot of things like that, kind of test you. And if it works with the small things, they'll always take it up a notch. And then with things that are more important to them, maybe a bit more serious, if that's the right word to use, they'll know just how to play it off. So narcissists do that a lot. They kind of build you up into doing things where you kind of feel it's your idea and it's plausible, but actually it's a means of control. Another way they control you is just it's the perfect combination of enticement versus, when they kind of entice you, when you're saying or doing something they like, they kind of give you that very positive feedback. But when you do something that they slightly get upset by, the narcissist might not give you any response, might have a straight face, might stonewall you a bit, even give you a bit of the silent treatment. It might not be much at first, but it'd be enough just to make you uncomfortable. And then they'll shake it off like nothing's happened and have normal conversations with you. But you just went through a few minutes or maybe a couple of hours of discomfort that you can't quite put your finger on. But you'll be careful next time not to say something that you think might upset them, because you don't want that unease to come back, right? So narcissists, that's something else they do. They perfect the combination of enticing you and giving that positive feedback with giving you these negative feedback, these negative ways of feeding back to you through things like stonewalling, silent treatment, when they're not very happy with you. And when applied correctly, they can get you to do just about anything they want you to do for them, and you'll just follow suit. Unless you reach that point where you don't care about upsetting them anymore. But if you want to keep them happy, and you're not really seeing what's happening, or maybe you do see what's happening, but you still want to keep them happy, they got you right where they want you. So yeah, that's another way that narcissists can control you. Yeah, so that, I mean, in those things, they're very good at it because they read you very well, and they have this toolbox of means of, they know just how to respond to make you worried about not wanting to upset them in the future. I mean, it's just they've lived most of their lives knowing how to play people, because for them their whole life is about getting people to serve them in the way that suits them. So you need to understand when you're dealing with a narcissist that you are fulfilling an agenda. Occasionally their agenda might overlap with yours in a sense that what they want you to do also suits you. So it's like, okay, you don't mind, but oftentimes it doesn't. But in time, the more that you submit to their attempts at control, it just means that they can use you for whatever they want later. And later, over time, as the narcissist tends to see you as someone of lower and lower worth, and the devaluation sets in more and more heavily, they'll take you to some pretty dark places in terms of things they'll ask you to do, or the ways they'll make you feel, or just the plain fact that they restrict, or rather constrict, your freedom in such a way where you lose all sense of identity. You really become an extension of them. You reach a point where just their energy, just the way they look at you and kind of vibe around you, they can already kind of control your behaviors and actions just by doing that, because they're so tuned in with you and tuned in and controlling you. And that's what's hard to break loose from once you've developed that strong, subtle but strong and seemingly unbreakable connection with them. They have you. They just really have you. But once you acknowledge it, you can start working on breaking it. But it's almost like you don't want to break it, if that makes sense. Because in a way, it's almost like you feel they're your not parent, but like your master. They control you. They pull your strings. Once you get used to somebody pulling your strings, even if they don't pull them in the healthy ways, sometimes you just give up your agency, and you don't know how to fight for it back. So you kind of accept it. It's a weird feeling. And a lot of people just can't be bothered, or don't know how, or afraid to try to regain their agency, their sense of agency. So yeah, narcissistic control. It doesn't tend to be forced per se. It tends to be subtle. It tends to be discreet, covert, effective, and it tends to run deep, and they get better at it over time.